Hey everyone, welcome back to Slay a Tray Thursday. This week we're doing Be Creative and Do Your Own Thing. So, I've been wanting to make a tray for my bathroom vanity that I could put stuff on, right? Like so much stuff between my stuff, my daughter's stuff. It's everywhere. So, I thought we could put it on a tray and make it really pretty and do something fun. So, here's my thought. I'm going to use this round tray mold, but I want it to be round, but I want it to not be one dimensional. So, I have this idea, and it might be a terrible one, but we're going to try it. So, I want to make the center of this bowl organic. And so, I was trying to figure out a way to create like a barrier in the middle, pour the outside, and then have the inside something different. So the outside I want to do in an eco pouring medium, and then the inside I want to do in resin. So I thought I would use this mesium gel. Now, I've never used it. It could be a complete and utter disaster, but I thought we would give it a try. So mesium gel is this sticky substance that is used to hold things down, to to keep them in place so they don't get knocked over, things like that. So if you have knickknacks, glass items, pottery, things like that that are on shelves or just in a place where you don't want to take a chance that they can get knocked over, broken, things like that, you can put this on the bottom and it will stick it down to your surface and it won't damage your surface or it won't damage your piece. So I thought we could use this as a barrier. And there are certainly different options for barriers. You can use hot glue, which I find to be a pain because you have to build up in multiple layers. So I find that that's very annoying for me. I don't enjoy that process at all. Although you do have a little bit of control with the hot glue gun, just to make sure that it goes exactly where you want it. So there's that advantage, but it's also you have to do multiple layers and then hope they don't leak. So there's that. You could use silicone technically, but I was worried that if I put a strip of silicone down on my silicone tray, that it might stick and it might not want to come off. So I didn't want to go that route since I didn't want to ruin my tray. So we're going to try this. And I want the center to be organic. So I want it to have, I want it to ebb and flow. Part of it I want to kind of come in a little bit. Part of it I want to go out. I just don't want it to be a perfect circle. So what I did was I searched through everything I could possibly find for something that was round. And I had this tray mold that I had made for a different project that is actually kind of the perfect size. So what I decided to do was take some of the mesium gel in small pieces. So, 2 inches, an inch, whatever. So I would just take some of the mesium gel out of the little jar. And oddly enough, it doesn't feel gross, which I thought it would, but it doesn't. It's actually fine. And so then I just went around the tray with the mesium gel. And yes, this is going to make it into a perfect circle. But once we have the size down, then we can go back in and we can adjust the pattern of the circle so that it isn't such a perfect circle. And getting this tray off of the silicone mold was a little bit more challenging than I thought it should be. I thought I should just be able to pick it up, but no, not quite so much. However, it was really quite perfect as far as the size goes. I was really happy with it. So I just decided to go around the circle and just kind of move the mesium gel out in some places and in some places just to make it to where it's just, it's natural, I guess, is what I was kind of going for. And so I'm going to do that all the way around the circle, kind of get it into the shape and the form that I want it to be in. And then I'm going to come back in behind it and I'm going to build up one extra layer. I could have done this all in one layer, honestly, if I would have just taken larger chunks and not made them so thin. But since I, didn't really know what I was doing, I thought I would start small and build up. So if I was going to do it again, I would absolutely take and make bigger, chunkier pieces. But it works out completely fine just to put down your layer, get it to where you want it to be, and then come in behind and just build it up to the height that you need it to be. I am a little bit concerned that this is going to leave a sticky residue on the mold, which could either impede the cure of the resin or will leave a scuff on the finished piece. So I don't know. We'll have to see how it turns out. That is my only concern at this point. Well, besides the fact that I am worried that the mixed mold is going to flow into that centerpiece. But my biggest concern right now is that it's going to leave just a weird residue on the mold that might be hard to get off, but we'll see. And now that we have our shape pretty much what we want it to be, it's time to mix up our eco pouring medium. So I have Resin, which is from J. Diction, which is my absolute favorite eco pouring medium, absolute favorite. And then I also have mixed to mold. Mixed to mold is not my favorite. I've had challenges with it in the past, and so we have kind of a hate relationship going on, but I don't want to waste it, and it's already open, so we'll just make it work. So most of these mediums, your Resin, your mixed to mold, your aqua cast, they are generally a ratio of powder to water. There's like Jesmonite AC100, which is powder to a very specific liquid that you mix in with the Jesmonite. So very different. You have to have that liquid that is very specific to their product. These are all water. So it's typically a ratio of 10 parts water to 10 parts powder to 3 parts water. So if you're going to use 100 grams of powder, then you would use 30 grams of water. I'm thinking that I'm going to need about 300-ish grams of powder. So right now I'm just measuring out 90 grams of room temperature water. There's a scale underneath there. I know you can't see it. It's very tiny, but I measured out the 90 grams of water, and now I'm just putting in the 300 grams of powder. Over on the left-hand side of my screen, you can see there's like a sieve there. If your powder is lumpy, clumpy, anything like that, you can actually sieve your powder into your water, and it will just take care of any of those. It'll kind of help you either break down those clumps or just, they'll get stuck in the sieve and then you can just throw them away. So if you do find that your powder ever gets a little bit clumpy, just sieve it and it works great. Your working time with any of these mediums is not the best. I think with Resin, it's about 10 minutes. I think mixed to mold about 8 minutes, somewhere in there. So let's say 8 to 10 minutes. So not a lot of working time. So you want to be fairly quick. There are a bunch of different liquid pigments that you can use. You can actually also use some powder pigments. They're like concrete powder pigments that you can use as well. I am just using the Resin pigments that you just mix in. I put in a little bit of the red, and then I'm going to put in a little bit of the pink as well, just to kind of achieve the color that I'm looking for. I want to kind of go with a palish pink, and because your powder is white, any color that you put into this is going to be muted and it's going to be more pastel. So just keep that in mind, that it's not going to necessarily be that deep, rich color that you might be looking for, or if you are looking for that, then you need to make sure that you adjust your pigments as needed. And I'm just going to spread a little bit of gold glitter around the edges of the mold where we're going to pour in the mix to mold, and then put the rest in my mix. The mix to mold is pretty decent at picking up any type of inclusions that you might put on the mold. It doesn't pick up everything, but it will pick up a lot of them. It'll pick up, some color, some glitter, things like that. And I guess it's time for the real test. Let's give it a pour and see if this barrier holds. I am so hopeful that this is going to work, but you just never know. So I'm going to pour all of this in, and then I'm going to babysit it. The cure time, the unmolding time for mix to mold is about an hour. Resin is about 30 minutes. So I'm going to let this set for an hour, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to remove the museum gel. Theoretically, at least that's what I plan on doing. We'll see if that actually works. But that is my plan, is that we'll come back, we'll remove the museum gel, we'll let it set for a couple of days to let the moisture evaporate from the mix to mold, because there's a lot of moisture in there and it needs to fully cure. It takes a couple of days for that. So we'll let it cure up, and then we'll pour our resin and see how that goes. So anytime, just on a separate side note, as far as cleaning up your mix to mold or your Resin-Crete, any of the eco pouring mediums, you never, ever, 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 ever want to put that in your drain. So I just take some extra water. You can see over on the far left side, a little extra water, pour it in the bowl, and then just clean it out with some paper towels. And then that bowl is good to go again. The bowls that I use in resin or Resin-Crete, anything like that, never get used in the kitchen or in the house. So just cleaning it out so that it's mostly clean is really all you have to do. All right, so let's meet back here in 1 hour and see if this works. Okay, so 1 hour later, this is what we're looking like. It did not leak. It did not leak. I am over the moon, actually, that it did not leak at all. I mean, not really at all. Nothing underneath. There's a little bit that kind of came up and over just because I didn't pour, or I didn't build up the sides of the museum gel enough. So it came up a little bit over the top by just a little tiny bit in one spot. But the rest of it is actually pretty darn great. I'm excited. There's just one little tiny spot that I have to dig out the museum gel where it came up over the top, but that's it. Everything else came out so easily. It was kind of miraculous, to be honest. Now I just have to decide, am I only going to pour resin in that centerpiece, or should I pour resin not only in the center, but then also on the very back? And I'm not sure. The mix to mold is about 1/4 of an inch thick, so it's pretty thin. So I'm thinking that I may want to reinforce it by doing an entire resin layer across the back. But I don't know. I'll figure that out. But for now, I'm stoked that this worked. I mean, that looks so good. I am excited. That is absolutely, I couldn't have asked for it to come out better. I can't wait. So I'm going to let this dry for a couple of days, and then we'll come back. We'll figure out what we're going to do, if we're going to do the entire back or if we're just doing the center, and then we'll go from there. So I'll see you in a couple of days. All right, fast forward 48 hours later, and I think we're dry enough to do this. So I mixed up a bunch of resin because I have a bunch of projects going right now, and I divided off, I think, 4 ounces, and I'm just going to put in some gold flake in there, just some of the gold foil flakes, and then I'm just going to give it a good mix to kind of break those up, and then I'm going to pour that in the center of this. And we're going to hope it stays there, and we're going to hope it doesn't leak. So my biggest concern is that the seal is broken on this from taking out the museum gel, and that it's going to leak underneath. And then we're going to see that weird discoloration on the front of it. But I guess we'll see what happens. So I'm going to pour this in, and I'm going to let this set for about 24 hours. And then I'm going to come back behind it, and I'm going to add some resin to the back of this. It's so thin, it's maybe 1/4 of an inch thin. And because it's so thin, I worry that it's going to easily break. So I'm going to come back behind it and just coat the entire back of it in resin. If I would have planned better, I would have made more of the mix to mold and then made it deeper, so that way it would be more reinforced. But I think that I'll just come behind with the resin, and that should theoretically make it strong enough so that it doesn't break. So fingers crossed, we'll let this cure and we'll see what happens. So I came back in and I top coated this with resin just to make it thicker. And it turned orange. Yeah, that's orange. I mean, it's not a hideous orange. It's not like Halloween pumpkin orange, but it's orange. It's orange sherbet all the way. Like when I was a kid, I used to love orange sherbet, and that's totally the vibes it's giving. Not what I wanted. I don't know if it wasn't dry enough or if this is just the joy of putting resin on top of an eco pour. But yeah, it's orange. So let's see if the other side is orange, if it's orange all the way through, or if maybe one side's pink, one side's orange. Okay, so, it's still pink where the resin didn't leak under. So the resin leaked under. I was afraid of that when the seal broke when I pulled out the mesium gel. So part of it is pink, part of it is more orangey, and I don't think there's going to be any way that I can get that resin off of this at this point. So the only way, I mean, we could sand it, right? If we really wanted to embark on massive sanding, we could sand it and see what that looks like. Or I can just top coat this other side. So that's not what I wanted, but you know what? We do what we have to do to make it work. So I'm going to top coat this side. We'll see what that looks like. And instead of going in a bathroom, it's going to go somewhere else where orange is all the rage. So I mixed up, I don't know, a bunch of resin because I was doing like 3 different projects. And do you ever just take a shortcut and you shouldn't, and you know you shouldn't? So I did not tape off the back of this, and I should have, because, you know, when you top coat resin, there's the possibility that it could run over the side. I'm going to babysit it. I'm going to work on it, but there's that possibility. And I did not tape off the edges. I thought about it after I poured that, and I was like, ooh, I should have taped off those edges, and I didn't. So we're going to hope for the best, but I elevated this on top of, I just happened to have a silicone rubber box sitting right there. So I just used that to elevate the piece up off of the table. That way, if it does run over the sides, it won't have a pool that's, you know, a pool of dried resin that you're trying to break off. And theoretically, if you tape off the back, if you get any drips, it'll stick to the tape and not your piece, and it's beautiful and magical. Yeah, if you do that. So I am just going to top coat this. I put a big big puddle in the middle of the piece, and then I'm just dragging it out to the sides. I did speed this up to 2 times the actual speed because nobody wants to watch that. So yeah, I'm just dragging the resin up to the edge and then just up to the edge. And so when you're top coating, it's actually a better idea to use a thicker resin. So like a 4-hour demold, a tabletop resin, something like that. They're so much thicker and they will stay exactly where you put them. I just don't like to use them because they're so thick, they hold onto bubbles. And to be honest, the tabletop one smells bad. Now, of course, I'm wearing a respirator, but when you take it off and you're leaving the room, or like when you come back in hours later, you can still smell it, and it just it's icky. So I prefer not to use them, even though they really do have their place. And I should have used them on this one. But, you know, I mean, the rules apparently don't apply to me. So this is going to cure for 24, 48 hours. It's really cold in here. It's about 40 degrees. So it's going to take a little bit longer to cure. And in the meantime, I'm going to pour a jar. I have an idea for a jar that I want to do to put on the tray, even though now that it's probably not going to go in my bathroom. I think it'll be cute. So stay tuned. We'll pour a jar and then we'll see what it looks like all together. So here's a jar that I made out of extra resin. I had black and white, so I just poured, a little bit of black and then some white at the bottom, and then I threw some gold leaf in there, and I think it turned out really cute. I like this mold. The only thing is it's kind of large, but I'm okay with that because let's face it, if you're putting something on your bathroom shelf, you need space. At least in my house we do, because there's so much stuff. I cannot believe how much beauty stuff that an 18-year-old needs. I mean, and then me, who's a little bit older than that. But this is the mold, and it's a pretty chunky mold, but it's a pretty mold, so we're going to go with it. It is pretty deep. I think it's like 4 inches deep. I could probably get away with using regular resin in it. I have in the past. The only issue is that it gets those little bubbles towards the bottom, which is normal because it overheats, it cures too fast. And so maybe with it being colder outside, it would be okay right now, but I just didn't feel like taking that chance. So I just mixed up some deep pour resin. I typically use the J. Diction deep pour, which I really like, but honestly, any deep pour resin will do you just fine. I feel like the J. Diction, I don't know. I just like their products. I can't explain why. I just like them. And of course, with all deep pours, it's very thin, it's very watery. And so it flows into all of those spaces. And then that way, that really prevents all the bubbles. I did go around and I did press quite a bit on all of the edges and the bottom just to make sure that we're not dealing with any large bubbles in there. And then I'm also going to take a micro brush and just run it around the inside of the lid edges and that little hole in the center, or that, like the little handle part of the lid. I'm going to run a micro brush in there and just kind of make sure there aren't any bubbles hanging out. And it's pretty unusual to get bubbles with deep pour anyway, just because it's so thin. And of course it takes, 48 to 72 hours to fully cure. So I am just actually going to move this off of my table and over onto a different mat so that way it can cure undisturbed for the next 2 to 3 days. And then we'll come back and we'll unmold it and we'll see if it works. And 8,247 hours later, it is finally cured. And a wee bit on the misshapen side. I think that is probably the product of being a very inexpensive mold and not necessarily the best quality. It's really pretty, but not necessarily, the highest of quality here. So I am just going to take some alcohol and spray it down into there and just move it around a little bit and see if I can get this mold to release its treasure. I have such a hard time getting some of these things out of molds. I know that it needs to be tight, but for heaven's sake. And then, so that centerpiece, if you ever have a jar or something like that and you've got that centerpiece in it, if you just grab onto it and give it a little twist, it'll pop right out. And then the lid is a completely different story. This lid laughed and mocked me the entire time. It took me so long to get this lid off, but finally it does happen. And it actually turned out way cuter than I expected. I usually don't make anything in clear, one, because you can see any imperfections, any bubbles, anything like that. So I don't use clear a lot. And there's also that higher probability that it's going to yellow. I mean, all resin yellows over time. And so I am always leery about using clear, but I feel like it complements the tray well this time. So you know what? We're going to make that exception. And let's face it, the bottom's a little bowed out. So if I have to remake it, it's not like that's a bad thing. And the tray still needs a little bit of work. I was really pleasantly surprised that the top of the tray stayed pink. Obviously, the back turned orange. I think that is because I did not let it dry long enough. And so it still had some moisture in it when I poured the resin. So it's orangey, but we can live with that. And there are like some scuff marks on the back that need to be sanded off, as well as like around the edges. So I'll run a sander on the back and then on the edges, and that will fix that. And then those issues will go away. But all in all, I am pretty pleased at how it turned out with the museum gel blocking off that space and really making it where you can have those different compartments. I think that turned out really nice. The only part is that, when the seal broke with the museum gel, that created some issues. So that is something that I would definitely try it again and see if I could keep it from breaking. And if not, maybe figure out a better plan for it once it does break. And I think the jar is a perfect complement to the tray. I think they go really well together. I'm glad I decided to do the gold leaf in the jar. Even though it's a little chunkier than I would want it to be, I do think that they complement each other. So yeah, all in all, I'm fairly happy with this. So you guys, thank you so much for taking some time out and spending with me today as we made our way through some uncharted territory, at least for me. And check out the other creators. They are down in the description box below. Beverly and Kathy are so amazing, and they are two of the kindest people. Please check out their videos. They're always so good. They have such great ideas. I think Laura from Laura's Design Corner is probably participating this week, and a few other people who have been participating regularly. So thank you guys again, and I hope to see you in 2 weeks where we will be doing Frosted and Frozen. Thanks, everyone. See you then.